Today I am using the Keystroke Medium Roast of Doom,
Of
Ooh.
Doom.
which is a French roast.
That's some serious coffee for a serious man. And thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast, Writer Wednesday. We are live talking about the process, getting the words down on the page. And with us, let's do the introductions. Below me is published sci-fi writer J.R. Hanley. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Outstanding. How about yourself?
I am awesome. And as mentioned, today's Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to Walt and J.R. Brian, you weren't in the service, were you?
No, I was not.
Okay, me neither. So, unless you count the Boy Scouts, but we don't. So,
Well, you've got one leg above me.
I did a lot of camping in my teenage years. That's all. And Ryan Danks, writer. You can find his stuff on Medium, and I understand you're working on some fiction right now, Ryan.
Yes, I am.
Are you doing NaNoWriMo?
No, I'm writing anyway. I'll probably hit the word count, but I'm not like doing that.
All right, cool. And last but not least, with his stylish background sporting, it sounds like the front of an upcoming novel. That is Walt Rebillard. How you doing, Walt?
Good morning, good afternoon, or wherever the sun may find you.
We have an international audience here at the BAMF podcast. So
Right on.
no one's listening to McMurray.
Oh, well then, instead of for the veterans, happy Armistice Day for the rest of the world.
Correct.
That's how they're rocking it in Canada right now, I understand.
In the UK, and anywhere the sun shines, I am assuming.
Raw.
So let's start with Walt, because Walt is a man with significant chime pressures on him at all times, and somehow he manages to crank out a huge amount of words. How do you do it, Walt? Is it dictation software? Is it just a rigid discipline of writing time? How do you make it happen?
I can't dictate stuff. I can dictate notes, but like to actually dictate prose, it's kind of not how my brain works. The other problem that I typically have is even with the best Dragon dictation software, I find that it leaves gaps in a lot of what's going on, just because of the fact that English is not my first language. So
Is it not?
No.
Oh.
So I have a tendency to try and catch my brain to kind of formulate how I'm trying to speak and speak well. Even the way I speak, like my accent, which is typically pretty neutral, is an exercise in trying to keep it the way it sounds, because the rest of my family, they talk like this. Everything is just spread out with lots of rolling sounds, and dictation software would just make fun of me at that point. But a lot of ums, a lot of ahs, and it has a tendency, even with the best dictation software that can filter it out, has a tendency to throw things off or make certain words come out as certain other ones, and you have to edit it again. And it's like the whole point was to save time, and I'm not going to do it that way. But as far as getting time to do that stuff, cell phones are huge. I mean, if you got a cell phone, you have a way to get your thoughts down whenever and wherever you need it, as long as you're not driving, because that gets weird. So, type out chapters when you're doing your thing. Send them to a Google Drive, or if you have iOS, you can send it to a share folder. Once you get home, all you got to do is open up that Drive file, and you can pick up where you left off. Waiting in the doctor's office, start typing. You waiting in line at the supermarket, start typing. Waiting at the gas station for the next guy to move so you can get the pump, get a few words, get a couple of ideas. We talked about this on Keystroke Coffee and Concepts before, but like even carrying like little sheets of paper with like a little tiny pencil or something like that in your back pocket, if you got a minute, then you got a minute to write. It's an act of discipline. But a big thing is social media is a time suck. Right now, as writers, you want to establish an audience, so you want to have the ability to push out your books. You want to have the ability to advertise. You want to have social groups so that you can interact with those who want to read your books, and you want to have the ability to have new people find you. So while that's all well and good, the problem is that if you start scrolling through people's feeds and you want to see, cute cat videos or what have you, that's taking time away from your writing. So usually what I do is I program in a 15-minute block where I can do some scrolling, make sure people are looking at my stuff, make sure I'm looking at other people's stuff that I'm interested in. Once that 15 minutes is up, I'm done. Get to writing, because if you hear it all the time, oh man, I just don't have the time. Well, those 15 posts you responded to in Facebook, the 3 on Twitter, and then you posting pictures of your new shoes on Instagram. Yeah, I can see how that would take a lot of time. So
I feel kind of called out here, Walt.
Did you post your new shoes on Instagram?
I haven't had new shoes in like 2 years, so no. But dog pictures.
Speakering is a legitimate business model.
Wait. So if you're doing some regular exercise, you need to replace your shoes, man.
Oh,
Proper foot gear.
I don't count jogging shoes. I get new jogging shoes every 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Right on.
Because otherwise you fuck up your ankles and knees. That's just necessary because I'm an old man. But when Walt says new shoes on Instagram, I'm not going to put my joggers on there. I mean, that's for fancy Timberlakes. I don't.
Timberlakes.
I'm a middle-aged guy in the Midwest. I don't care about shoes. Should I? Is it a thing we do now? I don't.
Right. But yeah, seriously, I mean, social media, especially throughout the election and stuff like that, everybody was glued because they wanted to know the latest of what was going on. And while everybody was gluing, I'm sitting there doing this on a keyboard, because my inner grunt was showing. Yes, it is there, JR. But yeah, I mean, get the words out. There's a really great guy who does podcasts now. He's been doing them for about 3 or 4 years. He only recently got to social media himself because he considered it a waste of time until he saw some of the value, and then he measures his amount of posts. The guy's name is Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL who uses. Yeah, Jocko's good people. Yeah. He's a former Navy SEAL, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. The guy is just a Renaissance man. He normally doesn't read fiction just because of the fact that he prefers historical accounts, because he feels there are a lot of lessons of history that we can learn. And if he's reading fiction, he's not going to have enough time to devote to those other books. But he usually reviews those books on his podcasts. But one of the things he says all the time is discipline equals freedom. And it's one of the greatest quotes I have ever heard made in modern times. Because if you think about it, if you discipline yourself to stay off of all the time-sucking things, you will have the freedom to write. If you discipline yourself to not spend the last 12 hours playing a video game because you had to grind out those levels, you'll have the time to write. And the same goes for reading or any other endeavor, right? If you cut out a lot of that other stuff. Now, granted, there's a lot of things you should be doing. So, for example, if you're a writer, you should be reading as voraciously as possible, because people always have different styles. You'll always have something to learn or pick up. And you can also use that as like seeing what trends are in the market right now. Like one of the biggest things that shocked the living crap out of me, I never would have seen it coming, is lit RPG.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
crazy.
But that goes hand in hand with the entire Twitch culture that we have right now. People logging in and paying a monthly fee to a person to watch them play through a video game, rather than you play through it yourself.
I don't understand that at all.
I will point out that it's less than 5% of Twitch channels have more than 5 viewers, and an awful lot of those have very attractive photogenic people on them. But that's a thing, or people paying and becoming fans of people just rolling dice and playing RPGs. Heck, you two, Walt and JR, are on a pretty well-known sci-fi writers playing old school RPGs.
Yep, and we routinely have anywhere between 25 to 100 viewers at one point. Now, granted, until JR starts showing up on camera with low-cut shirts, we're never going to cross over that 100. But I mean, some of these people out there, I logged into Twitch to watch Steven Chenault from Trollard Games. They got a Kickstarter running right now, so he's been doing like Ask Me Anythings and stuff like that for his Castle and Crusades game. And the main page comes up, and the first thing they do is they show you, the most popular Twitches that are going on right now, and the top 3 had no less than 4,000 viewers, and it's just like, I mean, one of them was a music channel, so obviously people just probably had it on in the background or whatever, and but the other 2 were video games. So that is a thing. That definitely is a thing.
Could also
So-
be when their parents tell them they can't play anymore. I take my kids' tablets away because they're done for the day, and they'll jump on YouTube and watch other people play the same game they were playing. I do that all the time.
It's,
Craziness.
It's crazy. Brian, what's your process? How do you
So-
make it happen?
I've gone through a whole bunch of different processes. I used to be disciplined like Walt, but I can't anymore. I put so much weight because Jade Punk did a really good job when it released, and I felt like that was a new bar for me. And I felt the same thing flipping over to fiction, that I would have to meet that level there too. I almost wish Jade Punk didn't do so well, so that way I'd still feel like I'm climbing. But so I do whatever I can to remove the weight of how important it all feels, or how I try to not be Shakespeare, So what I do is I write in longhand and notebook, and I do it with a fountain pen because it makes me feel fancy. And I do my first drafts on there. Just like with that, I used a couple different colors. I took part of this process from Neil Gaiman. And I'll use different colors each day. So that way, when I'm looking back, I can say, oh, that was 10 pages. That was a good day. Oh, half a page. That day sucked. But I can see it with the colors. And I find that when I do this, and I do it early in the morning, when I edit, I don't feel like I'm losing work. Like, I'm not cutting out 10 pages because I don't need them. I'm just not recording 10 pages, but those 10 pages still live with me. So it doesn't feel like my time is wasted when I'm pumping out the first draft. And but also it allows me to say no one is ever going to see this notebook but me. So I can start with whatever I want, and in any kind of ridiculous manner I want, because I just don't include that in the draft I use for the computer. And then when I transfer it to the computer, I pretend like I know what I was doing the whole time, and go back and fill in scenes and add, oh, I needed to foreshadow this bad guy showed up in the 3rd act. Well, let's foreshadow him so that way it makes sense and it's okay. And I can do that then. So that's the only way that I want to be faster, and I've tried to be faster recently, but it's the only way that I can finish work. And I guess if I'm finishing work, then it's faster than if I'm writing really lots of words and I'm not publishing anything. So more or less, that's my process.
Yeah, I saw the other day that they had a cool interview the other week with Christopher Paolini, the guy who did that Aragon series.
Oh yeah.
And he does everything longhand.
Well, so the weird thing is James Patterson is like the most prolific author ever. He never learned to use a computer. Everything's longhand.
Right on.
But he cheats. He has an editor do all of his transcribing, and he has co-writers who write a bunch of his outlines.
Now there's JR, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Jonathan Brazy who does he narrates while he hikes and then hires a transcription service?
No, it's not him. It's a fantasy guy, Mike Sullivan, I think.
Okay.
Oh, that's brilliant, though.
And Marco Cluse writes his longhand. He writes it on a with a stylus on like some sort of iPad type deal, and then it translates it into Word for his first draft. And before that, he said he wrote them by hand as well. Although, if you follow his newsletter, he said he's going to go back to not doing that because he wants to try to get out more than 2 books a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but the transcription service, you could even hire somebody who's just looking for side work and be like, hey, could you I'll send you these recordings. Can you transcribe this? Or I'll send you these pages. Can you transcribe it? But as far as like another tool in the toolbox, there's a scanner. It just funded a couple of years ago on Indiegogo, and now you can buy them. And what you do is you scan over a written page, and it just right into text, right into a word processor. So, and they're not expensive. They're $69 a piece. They're it's just the time of feeding the pages in, and you have to move the wand at a certain rate and stuff like that. That would drive me mental. So
Yeah,
I did that as an.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I did that as an intern, helping to digitize some of the historic books, but we had to do it wearing white gloves because the books were like from the 1600s.
oof.
Yeah, I had a job out of college. We were sorting through optical character recognition files of big class action lawsuits where the discovery is like, warehouses full of documents. And so they feed them all into a scanner and they hope the software was able to recognize it well enough. But this was 20 years ago, so who knows? But remember one day I went through a whole bunch of autopsy reports for ladies who died from breast implants.
Oof.
That was a weird day. I had strange feelings about that.
In one sense, you're talking about boobs all day long. In the other sense, you're talking about people who died all day long.
Women who died to enhance their breasts back when the implants were. It's complicated. JR, no more talking about boobs. Let's talk about
What kind of infantry Veterans Day is this then? All right.
Yeah, right.
So for mine, like I do dictation, but I don't like. I've heard people where I've actually heard sample files where they'll dictate the story from like beginning to end. I just can't. So I do sort of a hybrid where I'll dictate paragraphs at a time. And then edit what I dictate because sometimes it misses words. Sometimes I speak too fast. Sometimes, some of the made up words we've got, it can only learn so much. And training it would be more work than just fixing it in post. So I'll generally dictate a couple minutes at a time, and then I'll edit those words. And so, I tend to jump at 500 word increments that way, with about 10 minutes of writing. Of dictating and then cleaning it up for another couple hours, but it works. And I'm working on getting back on the wagon for that because for a while I was doing about 2,000 words a day, and then life came and crotch stomped me, and now I'm trying to claw my way back out.
Life has a way.
So, it does. But at least
How about you, Mike? What do you do to get some writing done?
Oh, it's a sad story. I don't want to be a wet blanket on the conversation, but just want to point out 1,000 words a day was Ray Bradbury's old advice. He said, "You want to be a writer, do 1,000 words a day." So JR was doubling that. I've been reflecting more over these last 9 months that we've been on lockdown, and I've realized what a role. I don't want to say anxiety, maybe nervousness or imposter syndrome plays in trying to write. Like if I sit down to a blank document, I'm just like, fuck. But if I put some RPG stats on it, I'm like, it's a gaming product. Who the fuck cares? I can do this. It's not a big deal. If I write it in comic book script format, it's a comic book. It's people wrap their fish in it. Who cares? It's it makes it. And so if I'm trying to write fiction, I send myself emails all day. I'll do a little snippet of dialogue, email it to myself, reply to that, maybe some character notes. And eventually I get sick of doing that. And so I'll just sit down with the whole document and make it, somehow readable. And then usually I get sick of the whole goddamn thing and never look at it again. That's why I have a bunch of half-finished stories that I mentioned to Walt and then never show them because they're just floating out on my Gmail box, not finished and proofread and not in a state where I can show anybody. But so.
I definitely want to read that World War I story you were telling us about the last time. I actually reached out to Walt afterward, like, where can I buy this?
Right, Kaiser's Gate.
Yeah, and Walt said, he's been writing that for a decade, so maybe 2030.
That seems reasonable. There's
the role playing game that you could pick up.
There's also a short story collection. I didn't get my piece done for that in time, but there is some good stuff there. I'll shoot the link. I'll just save the page here because we have higher technology. We can do this, right?
Outstanding.
Absolutely. What's another fun thing too is Tales from the Front. Right on. Another fun thing you can do with like if you have blank page anxiety and you're looking at that page like, what am I supposed to do? If you got a friend who's a writer, one of my ghostwriter friends does this when he's having white space writer's block. Mm-hmm. He'll call up a friend who's a writer and be like, do me a favor, write something. Just type something in this document. This is what the story is going to be, but I don't know how to start it. And he said he's shown me some of the stuff that he's written or he's received from people doing that, and it's hysterical. Like He was writing. He was ghostwriting a spy thriller, and he sent it to a buddy, and he's like, "Look, I don't know how to start this. You know, it's going to be like James Bond and blah blah blah, and I can't." And his buddy wrote the first line and sent it back, and it said, "Most people don't think a dwarf with a set of gold teeth can make an ominous villain. I think they're wrong." And he went, "Oh, go ahead, please."
No, go ahead and finish.
I was going to say he went on to write the book, and the author he wrote it for, Ghost wrote it for, actually made a good deal of money. That line did not make it into the book until later, as a joke, but it was just something that made him laugh and kind of get over that anxiety that he just needed to put something down on the page.
Yeah, I can see that working. I've been playing around with trying to get an outline for a novel or a short story, and for the different stages of different acts, like make random encounter tables, like you would in a gaming product. So I can just roll a d20. Okay, this is what happens here. It just as a way to try to do the same thing, just get something on the page, and then once you get something down, you can fix it, you can break it, you can do something with it. But
one of the things that I like to do for that, because I am the same thing, same problem, is my first drafts are all in present tense. He says, she does, all that kind of stuff, instead of he said or she did. And I'm not going to want to publish it that way, and I know that. So when I sit down to write, it's like, well, I'm just writing here. No one can see this because it's in present tense. I have to transfer it. And knowing that I'm going to transfer this and change it takes a bunch of that stress off.
I could see that.
Although sometimes I do end up mixing my tenses. I just when I'm editing, I'll just copy the old one and forget to change it. So there's some of that, but Grammarly catches that.
I have to go in about 2 minutes. My wife wants me to get the dogs leashed up so we can.
Okay, well, since you brought up James Bond, I thought this was a fun story I heard recently. Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels, his writing process is he will go to a city that he doesn't like and rent a hotel room that is uncomfortable. And he's not allowed to leave until he finishes the novel, which he does in 2 weeks. And writing the novel is literally an escape. He has to do it to escape his circumstances. And I always thought that was funny because, for one, it shows that he doesn't actually like writing, and a lot of people don't. They like to have written, but it's just kind of interesting that the way that he. That's probably why James Bond plots feel like they're so fast. He just wants to blast through them.
His writing's an escape room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember we've had Dan Abnett on a few times. If you're not familiar with him, he's the guy who came up with the most recent incarnation of Guardians of the Galaxy. He's also written a shit ton for the Warhammer 40K universe.
Oh,
and Abnett's one of the few guys who he just loves to be in front of a keyboard. He loves to be writing, and it's I guess it's a gift. And I'd like to go much longer, but I've gotten this message from my wife saying we need to head out. So I've got to bail. JR, Brian, Walt, always a pleasure, sirs. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Next Wednesday, do it again.
Hit it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's hammer out a subject in email, and we'll see you next time on the Beth Podcast.